Comic Book Savant Extra, Episode 1. Welcome to the Comic Book Savant Podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. What you might be wondering if you listen to the intro is like, what does he mean by extra? Well, if you guys have been kind of following me on social media, especially Instagram or Twitter, you know, I've talked about on the show previously how episodes were coming a little slow over the past 2 months, and it was due to me dealing with a serious illness situation that finally got all clear from the doctor. You know, I'm on the mend now, trying to work back into my regular routine. And like I was saying before, that while I was not able to produce the episodes, I was still reading, watching, doing my outlines for the shows. So I have like a lot of content built up, and I've been, working, pre-recording to make sure I keep content on a consistent flow going forward. That was the one thing that I kind of learned coming out of the illness. I don't want content to drop off, or for you guys as listeners and supporters of the show to kind of feel like I'm falling off or I'm pod fading, because he ran into those problems when real life situations came up in the past. And, you can lose listeners that way if you're not consistently, or you're normally consistently providing content and then you drop off for any amount of time. And I kind of felt like, okay, this is the time and the place to kind of combat that, to kind of make sure behind the scenes that I keep a constant flow of content ready. So if anything comes up, it doesn't break the chain of how you guys get used to how content drops for the show and also on the YouTube channel. So I've been working hard this past week, getting back up on my feet, producing content for both the YouTube channel and the podcast. And with that, some extra stuff will come up from time to time, where I had a chance this past weekend to go see Tomb Raider. It wasn't necessarily something that I was thinking about reviewing for the show initially, but then I remembered that, Tomb Raider currently has a comic book, and way back in the 90s, when in the mid 90s, when the video game was originally really at its peak popularity, that it was multiple comic books put out by Image under Wildstorm. So I thought it was cool to kind of visit it under this umbrella and do a review for it. So I'll do the same format that I normally do, where I'll do a spoiler-filled review here on the YouTube channel. It'll be a non-spoiler review. So if you haven't seen Tomb Raider and you're considering seeing it, stop the podcast right now. Head over to the YouTube channel. You can check out a non-spoiler review so I don't ruin anything for you. And then once you had a chance to see the movie, you can come back here and watch it. And I might be out, I will be doing more Comic Book Savant extra episodes. That'll be extra content that you get in between the regular episodes. You still got a regular episode coming this week. It'll just come later in the week. You should be getting this Tuesday evening, and then I'll put out the regular episode that I already had planned on Thursday, to give you guys a couple of days to get through this if you want to listen to it, and then you still have the regular episode that I had planned. So it's kind of new things that pop up, or something that is immediate that I want to get out to you guys and, put that out there for us to discuss. I will put it out under Comic Book Savant Extra, it doesn't break up the flow of the numbering of the regular episodes that I might already have done that I want to get out to you guys, already have planned to get out to you guys at a certain time. So you'll be seeing that pop up from time to time, and you'll probably see it more and more, because it's just going to be a crazy summer. We have so many movies on the horizon. Comic Cons popping up. We have San Diego Comic Con and some other shows in between, so it'll be certain news that'll be dropping, more movie reviews. Like I said, I didn't consider it when I was breaking down all the more direct comic book movies, but it definitely has a history like, Star Trek and Star Wars, where they've had over the years, and currently they have numerous comics that have been published for decades, so they do fall under the umbrella of a comic book movie, just not in the direct sense like an Avengers or Black Panther or Justice League would, but they still fall under the umbrella because they are published comics that you can go out and get, so they would be of interest of a broad comic book fan. So with all that being said, let's get into talking about Tomb Raider. This is more so, it's overall based on the Tomb Raider franchise, if you're familiar with it, by Eidos Games. This current movie, we've had 2 previous movies that were done starring Angelina Jolie that were done in the early 2000s. Now we fast forward. The Tomb Raider video game series had a reboot about 2-3 years ago. They've had 2 games. They've had Tomb Raider and then Rise of the Tomb Raider, and they just announced, I want to say Friday on the release date of the film, that the 3rd game will be coming out in September. I cannot remember right off the top what's going to be the name of the 3rd game. But they have a 3rd movie coming as well, which is awesome, because I played the Tomb Raider game and I got the 2nd one not too long ago, and I actually just started playing it this weekend. The movie kind of inspired me to play the game, so now I'm playing through Rise of the Tomb Raider, which helped give me, when I start playing it, more reference into the movie. But this current movie is not based on the original series that was back in the 90s, because this is a 25-year-old franchise at this point. Eidos Games took a break from, like I said, around the time after the last movies came out till recently. So they decided to do a reboot to the game, kind of grounded a little bit more in the modern day, and have a little bit more of a gritty edge to the game. And they went through something that they didn't do in the beginning, and kind of root her a little bit more in reality and give her an origin story. So these 3 games kind of serves as her origin of Tomb Raider, Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, what the person that we got to know in the original game, in the original series. She was already pretty much established. The first game, as in this first movie, sets to establish how she started becoming an adventurer. The movie's directed by, and I hope I pronounce his name correctly, he's a Norwegian director. His name is Roar Uthaug. Most of his films, this is his first kind of American wide release film. All his other movies have been short film, or he's done a couple of long form films over in Norway. So this is kind of his first international kind of big release film. So I'm not too familiar with his work. This is the first film that I've seen with his direction. And we have it that the writers on the film is Geneva Robertson Dorette, Alistair Siddons, and Evan Doherty. Most of these writers, I always like to try to do a little bit of research on IMDb when I'm not familiar with certain directors or writers. Most of these writers are relatively new to Hollywood. They have a lot of scripts that they've penned that are going to be upcoming films. A couple of the writers were a part of the huge writers' room they had over with the Transformers and the Hasbro toy properties. So some of them have penned stuff for Transformers movies that might be upcoming, Visionaries, a lot of the old Hasbro toys that, we heard a lot of rumblings that they wanted to do like this shared collective universe, and they hired like Robert Kirkman and all these writers in this writer's room for those properties back before the last night came out. So I saw on IMDb, like, again, a lot of scripts they've penned are for things that have been announced but not are currently in production. So they don't have a real track record as far as, I could state they've penned these films that you have heard of, but they have a lot of upcoming projects that potentially we will see in the future, which is interesting. Now, the breakdown for the movie is as follows. Lara Croft, the fiercely independent daughter of a missing adventurer, must push herself beyond her limits when she finds herself on an island where her father disappeared. And the cast, we have Alicia Vikander, Oscar winner, as Lara Croft. We have Dominic West, Lord Richard Croft, which for most people, if you ever watched the show The Wire, he was McNulty on The Wire, and that's probably what he's most famous for. He's been around as an actor for quite a while because The Wire's been off TV for years, but he's been a really strong supporting actor. You've probably seen him he was in 300. He has a lot of different supporting roles, all over the place. But this is kind of the first time I've seen him in maybe since 300 in a more elevated kind of prominent role that I can remember. We have Walton Goggins as Matthias Vogel. We have Daniel Wu as Lou Ren. We have Kristen Scott Thomas as Anna Miller. We have Nick Frost as Max. And we have Jamie Winstone as Pamela. And I just have to come out the gate saying this about the movie. I really enjoyed it. I kind of enjoyed it more than what I anticipated. It was one of these movies where it was on the fence for me. When I saw the first trailer for the movie, I wasn't exactly sold, like this is going to be a slam dunk, I got to go see it. It looked kind of pedestrian when I first saw the first trailer. The second trailer hit, it kind of raised my eyebrows, and it's like, okay, we might, check this out. I was asking my wife, and I was like, do you think this is something you want to see? She's like, I'm down to check it out. And we were actually running errands on Friday. We both had time off, and we were just running, errands, doing stuff for the house. And we're kind of like, you want to go see a movie? And I was like, well, Tomb Raider came out today, so we popped on the Movie Pass app. It was like, okay, we can go to, the next showing is at 1:00. You want to go see it? And we kind of just like went on a whim. And like I said, I was pleasantly surprised by the movie. I don't know a lot of Alicia Vikander's work. I know she's an Oscar winner. I've heard her name mentioned so many times in relation to different movies. But the only work of Alicia's that or only other film I've seen Alicia Vikander in was Jason Bourne from a couple of years ago, which I thought she was really good or had a really strong performance in that movie. So I was neither here nor there. I guess from the initial trailer, I wasn't 100% sold on her as Lara Croft. And I think a lot of people have made different comments about as far as like her physical appearance and things of that nature, because the original Lara Croft visualization that we got from the video games was very from the early games of the franchise in the 90s and early 2000s. She was very a sexualized character, big breasts, very curvaceous, with the two gun holsters, and it was a very sexualized character, and that's how she gained a lot of popularity, just by the visual stylings of the character. And of course the games were great, but Eidos sexed it up, and I was a young, in late teens, early 20s, they were appealing to the male demographic with that. One thing that I really liked about the reboot game is that they totally changed that. They, she wasn't as curvaceous. She was more athletic build, not so buxom. And they, to make her look more like a every woman, or, a more typical woman. And I think that was great because it put more focus on the character itself, not just the way the character looked. And Alicia follows that. But so it wasn't that bothered me about the character. It just, she's such a small framed, female. I was looking maybe for someone that was a little bit more muscular and a little bit more athletic based on what I saw with the games. So it didn't really click like she was the one. I kind of felt like, I don't know if she's the right actress for me personally in the role. And that carries on at parts in the movie itself where at parts, I believed her more as Lara Croft than others. I don't think it was any fault of her own. I really think it was the weakness of the script itself and a little bit of the direction. Now, again, I'm a little bit older. I grew up with the original games. I've played the majority of the games in the franchise. And like I said, I've played the first game of the reboot, which most of this story is based upon. And I'm currently playing the newest game, which immediately in the first like half an hour to hour that I started playing it, a lot of the story actually, they took some parts of the first game, reboot game, Tomb Raider, and they took the first kind of intro to the story of the second game, and it's infused a lot towards the end of the movie. And this is a problem where I kind of have with the scripting of the movie. I felt like, even with Alicia, I don't know, and I saw maybe one interview with her, and I think she said she wasn't a huge gamer, wasn't really allowed to have video games when she was younger, so she kind of played games here and there through like cousins and different family members, so she wasn't a hardcore gamer, and she's a little bit young to be around when the original Tomb Raider games, came out. So I don't think she was 100% heavily versed like in the character and the lore, and I don't think the people that wrote the story, because at points in certain dialogue, it didn't feel like they heavily knew the character, as and you want to have someone very versed in the history and the background of the character, so it feels like the character. And it distinctly felt like at particular parts of the movie that it was that the people did not know the character, and it kind of hampers the movie. I felt like her as an actress, she found her way more as she got comfortable with the character, to more towards the end. So it left me on a note of, though at parts in the beginning, it felt like a huge departure from everything I knew of the Lara Croft character, and they added a lot of epilogue type parts of the movie that wasn't in the original game, as far as adding to how she resented her father for leaving her, so she didn't accept, she was from a wealthy family, and she did everything to avoid like using her father's money, and just kind of renouncing all this fame and this fortune that came with her name, and kind of just lived as a bike messenger. She and I felt like it kind of hurt the character, because Laura, even in the Tomb Raider game that this movie's based off of, she was still very educated. We didn't know much of her because her story picks up a little bit differently. We already have her on the way to the island in the video game, and so you get kind of flashbacks of what she's been doing before then. We don't actually see it, where this movie clocks in. It's I don't think it's even a full 2 hours. They kind of spend, I feel like, a little too much time in the beginning of the movie, like establishing her in this, this pretense period of era in her life, like before she stumbles across her father's research, and she finally decides, okay, he's been missing for 7-8 years, and she's pushed by the Kristen Scott Thomas character, the Anna Miller, to like, okay, at this point you have to sign these papers stating that your father's dead, so you can take control of your inheritance and take control of, cross investments. Like, you have a whole life, you have a company that you're responsible for. So this movie clocks in, it's just shy of 2 hours. It's 1 hour 58 minutes runtime. And I feel like too much of the movie focused on like seeing her in England, and they had her like she was a bike messenger, and like it was a whole bike race scene. To me, all of it was like fluff, and it didn't add much to the character at all. So I kind of feel like I wish they kind of the game itself, the Tomb Raider game, that this one is based on the reboot that they did back in I want to say I think it was 2015 when it came out, 2014 or 2015. It was a very well told story, very well paced. Now certain elements are like they're video game-ish, so you kind of gotta take that in consideration, because this is what it's based off of. I don't feel like the whole biker element and all that kind of stuff helped her character, or even helped us connect to her character at all. Like, you could have really trimmed that down from being so much of the first half. I mean, I want to say if the movie is an hour and 58 minutes, I want to say they probably spent a good 30 to 40-ish minutes on like this stuff, and it hurt the movie, because by the time they got to the island, they took so many different elements from the game and her being on the island, and they were super condensed and they went by so fast. And I thought that was where in the game, being a player controlling Laura, like you really, really connected to her character and seeing her learn the skills to survive. She, we have to think this is not the Lara Croft, especially for someone like myself that played the original games where you kind of came out the box and it's like she's like Nathan Drake, she's like Indiana Jones, and she's like ready to go and she's established. She's been doing this for a while. In this iteration of Tomb Raider, she gets, gets on this island and she has to learn. I'm separated from the crew of the ship, and these people are on this island. She's stumbling across her father's research and she's trying to find him, or trying to find what led him to get lost on this island, and she has to learn to survive how she goes. It's very dangerous people, and she has to do what she has to do, and she learns it on the fly. She learns to construct weapons, how to fight for her survival, and a lot of that is dumbed down and kind of cut out through the movie. It's certain particular shots and scenes or parts of scenes that are pulled directly from the video game, but they don't hold on them long enough to really resonate the way they should have been, to really connect. But in those short scenes, Alicia really shows how good an actress she is, to not necessarily be super versed in a character and just a good actress playing the part with the little she had on the paper and doing it to the highest of her ability. So for that, like I said, she won me over as the movie went on in the role, because she had a lot to overcome with maybe a weakness of the director's knowledge of the source material and the writers. And she, maybe I feel like it was off pure instinct of her being such a good actress that she made it work. Because, with the scripting, the dialogue at parts were terrible, and she sells it as much as she could because it was so kind of corny that she made it palatable. So she really is a saving grace to the movie. And if you just look at the physical transformation that she went through, and I think she's posted like on YouTube like videos of her training. She was talking about how seriously like she took it. So she understood that Lara Croft was an icon in this way. So she's trained so hard and got so ripped for this movie, which I super appreciate. You can tell an actor or actress, or just an actor in general, it doesn't have to be any gender specific, when they dedicate themselves that much and go that hard for a role. And she totally transformed her body and was like shredded out of her mind, and I really appreciated that on screen, because it really translates extremely well. I loved her connection to Dominic West as Lord Richard Croft. It was kind of cool because sometimes when you see people play father and daughter, you'll be like, okay, they don't kind of resemble. I like picking him because they actually kind of resemble and look like they're related in real life. So that connection with them was really cool. Now, one thing that bothered me in the scripting of his character, in the initial game, he's dead. Here she's thought he's dead. She comes across him in the island, and he helps her considerably. Now, to me, that I like the actor, and I like the role, and I like the connection that was played between the two of them. But again, they kind of use him as a kind of cheat code because he has the bow and arrow, and then you start seeing flashbacks to her training with archery, and then she just has it. It was a lot cooler seeing she didn't have her father there. She was really 100% alone, and having to find these things and craft these things, knowing, we find out that she does have an archery background, and she, constructs her own, bow and arrow by things she finds, and she uses it as her main weapon of choice in the game. I would have liked to see more of that. It was like a cheat code that he just happened to have a perfectly good bow and arrow there, and she just picks it up, tosses it on her shoulder, and like runs back, I'm going to go do something type thing. It really undercut a lot of the character building that you wanted to see with the Lara Croft character, since this serves as an origin story that we didn't get. Another thing that the scripting really let us, having such a strong actress as Alicia Vikander in the lead role, I felt like they dumbed down the Lara Croft character. You have to think she's an intellectual and an intelligent on the level of a Nathan Drake when it came to history and languages and these type of things. and you know, or Nathan Drake, or if you have a Indiana Jones type character, and you know, I felt like even in the Angelina Jolie movies, they made her very much the equal of anyone around her as an intellectual. And it was like certain times when she was trying to solve puzzles and do things of that nature that that her male counterparts easily had the answer that she couldn't see, and she's been poring over this stuff for such a long time, and they just would say it was one thing. It was one scene, I think it's in the trailer, and she's like, I have to figure out what these are, what these markings are. And the guy's like drunk and he lifts over his towel over his face and was like, they're clock hands. And she's like, they're not clock hands. And he's like, oh, they are clock hands. And I'm like, why wouldn't she know something like that? You know, I don't know. Maybe I take it a little bit more personal for me because I grew up in a single parent home, and it was my mom. And, you know, I have a thing about how, just personally, how women are portrayed in certain lights. And when it comes to, I don't think there's anything more attractive or more empowering than an intelligent, strong woman. And I feel like they kind of showed her strength more so than her intelligence throughout this movie. And Laura's supposed to be that perfect blend of the two. And I feel like they kind of weakened her character in that way, just like they weaken showing more of her internal strength, not physical strength, with her character on her will to want to survive and do whatever it took to survive by making her own weapons and going after, trying to follow her father's wishes and to stop this evil corporation or Trinity from getting to these ruins and unleashing this plague upon the world. And I feel like they kind of undercut her character in that way. But I have to highly recommend going to see this movie. It was really fun. Again, it's not a perfect movie by any means. I feel like I will buy this when it comes out on home video. I'm a completionist. They had just remastered the original Lara Croft Tomb Raider movies, and I actually in the lead up for the release of this movie, so I had just got those two movies, and I'm a super completionist when it comes to all these kind of things. So like, I'll buy this to have it with my Tomb Raider set of movies, most definitely. And I enjoyed a lot of aspects of the movie, don't get me wrong, but it's certain things, just because I've always been a huge Lara Croft fan, and I actually read the old Image series. It was done by Dan Jurgens and Andy Park. I used to read that series. I haven't read the new Tomb Raider comics yet, but I'm a big fan, like I said, of the new games. And I'm going to be getting that third game when it comes out in September. That's why I'm jumping on the second game now, so I can get it completed between now and the summer, so I'm all ramped up ready for the new Tomb Raider game. It's always been an amazing series, and the direction they took it in the reboot, basing it in a little more reality and more gritty game, and definitely more survival game, I've really enjoyed so far. So I'm a huge fan. So if I have to give it a rating from my rating scale, I would say it's a date night rental. I would give it a 7 out of 10. Definitely worth checking out. Please support the movie. Black Panther is killing it right now in the theaters. It's still number one for the 5th week in a row. This clocked in just domestically. It made about, I want to say it was like 23 million, which is a little bit disappointing. I was hoping it would do around 30 million, because I really want this movie to succeed, because the one thing I felt like as a whole that the director, the writers did, as well as Alicia, because she won me over as Laura, and I want to see this franchise continue. I feel like it could only get better from here. I liken it to like the Blade trilogy of movies. There was in a time where where comic book movies, before we got the X-Men and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, this is like the little franchise that could, hopefully it makes enough money where they bring her back a couple years, do a sequel and do a trilogy to kind of complement along with the games they have going out, and that each one gets better, because that was the one thing about the Blade trilogy. The third movie was crap. The first two were good. The third one was just horrible. It had good parts to it, but it wasn't that good. And that's what I like in this movie too. Like, if I had to compare them to any movie, like if I wanted to compare them, because I'm doing a comparison with the Blade trilogy, this movie kind of has the opposite effect. It's kind of like if you can stomach Blade trilogy. Like I said, it has really good parts to it, but it's not the best overall movie. I kind of liken this Tomb Raider movie to Blade Trinity. So they only can go up from here. So I feel like as they go through, they'll only get better. Even if they keep the same, hopefully they get better writers. I like the eye of this director. He has some talent, so hopefully he gets another movie under his belt before maybe if they do make enough to continue with the series. I like to see him come back with his cinematographer because they had a pretty good eye. I like the visual styling of the movie. They need better writers, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing for them going forward is to really get an established writing team to pen a better script for the sequel if we ever get a sequel. And I feel like they'll be on the right track. But overall, it's a 7 out of 10. It's definitely worth, if you want to just have a fun time, this is a fun popcorn action film. It's nothing too deep with it, but it's great fun. And I think you enjoy your 2 hours at the movie. You won't feel like your time is wasted. You'll see different problems with it, but it's just a fun time at the movies. So definitely check it out. That's all I have for you guys for this first episode of Comic Book Savant Extra. Like I said, you'll get more of these in the future. It's just in between because, like I said, I'm constantly working on content for you guys. Thursday will be another episode of the actual show. So be on the lookout for that. So you'll get this Tuesday night. That'll be out Thursday morning, more than likely. So we're going to keep rolling with the content, and I'll have the YouTube video up for the non-spoiler review. So check out youtube.com/Comic Book Savant, and you'll find the non-spoiler review for this Tomb Raider film there as well. So if you want to share that with someone that's considering going to the movie, just send them over to the YouTube channel or just shoot them that link over so they can check out a non-spoiler review. But that's all I have for you guys for right now. I'll see you guys later, and you guys take care and have a good week. Bye.